Well, hello, amazing, gorgeous you. Welcome to the Whole Life Podcast Show, where we again have Chris Cambas, therapist, marriage and family therapist, and he works a lot with infidelity and betrayal trauma that comes through infidelity and how to build a solid relationship after he cheats. So have you been cheated on? Have you cheated? Has cheated somehow ripped through your life and betrayal? Well, we're going to learn how to heal, how to build a healthy relationship. It's going to be so good. Listen to the end because we offer some real practical truth all the way through. Hold on, I want to ping off something you just said. So so turning away, and it could be either me turning away or I perceive my spouse as turning away. So one of the things you're talking about is I'm afraid my spouse is turning away. So to protect my heart, I'm going to turn away and towards someone else and have an affair because I'm afraid of being lonely. Is that what you're talking about?
So kind of, sure. I mean, it could play out like that. You could have, let's say I'm turning away from my wife, right? I'm just not interested in her anymore. Right. So because in my mind, I can be thinking, she has betrayed me in a lot of ways, thus turned away. Right. Or I could just simply be, look, I'm not interested anymore. So in my heart and mind, I've left this relationship and I'm living out here. I'm not living in this relationship anymore. So clearly she would feel that. Right. So that would make her more vulnerable over time to affairs, but it would also, I've already left, right? So I'm very vulnerable to affairs.
Yeah.
That
right.
point as well.
Okay.
So it's either I'm turning away or I perceive that my spouse is turning away from me.
Okay.
Right? So, and that erodes the basis of trustworthiness. And
that primal attachment need, it feels so raw.
Completely. Right. We have to attach. Right. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to attach somewhere. And more often than not, it does play out to another human, right? But you also see people attached to alcohol and, mm-hmm. Drugs and work and, all kinds of different things. So, yeah.
If your partner's turning away, I guess attached to the Lord is the best thing to do and try to get into couples counseling.
100%, right? We want people to be able to securely attach to God, which mm-hmm. More often than not, they don't, right? Not because they're bad people or not because they can't attach well in relationships, whether it's with God or their spouse. I think more often than not, people just don't know how to. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. I do a lot with the individual in trauma healing. And sometimes, the attachment wound between us and God is something that needs to be healed. For sure. But I love the scripture, Psalm 27:1. The Lord is the stronghold of my life. He is strongly holding us if we'll let him.
100%. He's not going anywhere. Mm-mm. Right. I mean, we can kick and holler and scream and think that he's not there and all that. He's always there. He's never letting us go. He's always the rock, But
okay. So let's see. We're 3 stories up.
Yeah. So we're 3 stories up, but those first 3 floors are the friendship system. Mm-hmm. Love mapping, sharing fondness, admiration, and turning towards. Because couples say, I just want a good friendship. But, words have meaning. Like, what is it? What do you mean by friendship? Well, we know what friendship is through the research. And so when we're doing those 3 things as a trend line, right? Love mapping, sharing fondness, admiration, turning towards, we end up in the positive perspective. The relationship will feel good, right? Not perfect, mm-hmm. right? But I get up one morning and I'm grumpy. My wife would think he's having a bad day and not mm-hmm. think anything about it. When we're not doing those things, love mapping, fondness, and admiration, turning towards, right, we'll end up in the negative perspective. And that same scenario of me being grumpy, getting out of bed would be, here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go again. Mm-hmm. And so that's the negative perspective. And it's important to really get after that sooner than later because people will begin to start slipping out of a thing that we call negative sentiment override.
Yeah.
Right? Where there's not a remembering of good. And when that becomes a perpetual state, right, there's a complete rewriting of history that takes place where there was once good, evil's assigned, right?
And at this point, we're traumatizing one another because we're hurting our love object.
100%.
Oh.
Think about this. Dr. Barber, we're talking about trauma. Look, there was this point in time, we've walked down an aisle. We spent all these years with our spouse. We finally walk down an aisle with them. We take vows. We make a covenant. I mean, these are significant things, right? And then suddenly this enormous world that we've created with all the hopes and dreams and whatnot are now crashing, right? That's traumatic, right? Any way you want to slice and dice that, that's a traumatic setting.
Yeah.
And, divorce creates grief in people. People go through stages of grief, right?
Oh, it's so painful.
Super painful. And it's important to remember that with any trauma, right, we start changing people at cellular levels.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people experience trauma, then it becomes super important to start taking care of the body, right? Spiritually, physically, emotionally, right? How we're eating, how we're sleeping, how we're exercising, what we're listening to, right? It becomes this whole thing now. I've got to, I have to heal my body in its entirety, spiritually, physically, emotionally. So these are not small topics, right? I mean, these are substantial things. I think the issue is, as human beings, we just kind of, think we can plow through them, never actually realizing the toll these things truly take on us.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, listen, just living in a state of unforgiveness, right, will wreck you, right?
Yes.
Never addressing trauma, which there could be unforgiveness involved in that. I mean, we're just ticking time bombs, right? So we want to reverse when people go from the negative perspective and they get into a state of full-blown negative sentiment override, right? There's a complete rewriting of history that takes place where there was once good, evil's assigned. 50% of couples' interactions become skewed. Someone does something nice, the other person assigns evil to it, and the marriage it's over with at that point. There's no therapy that's going to change it, right? The people have completely left. And so those are the first four floors of the sound relationship house. Remember, we're talking about teaching people how to securely attach, right?
Right.
When we go to the fifth floor, it's about conflict. And the masters of relationship do a lot of things, but three things in particular. Mm-hmm. And the first is they accept influence, meaning they give one another's opinions the same weight, the same value as their own. Men aren't really great at this. They're not, we film babies, 1-year-old children.
Thank you for bringing up the gender issue, because I was going to ask, I was debating in my mind about asking, and some women have problems with it too. I know that, but in our clinic, we do see some gender differences here.
Yeah, so the guys aren't good at accepting influence. We have videotape of 1-year-old kids, right? And you see the little girl babies accepting influence from little boy babies, and the little boys don't accept influence from the little girl babies. Mm-hmm. But there's this universal phenomena that takes place. Right about 7 years old, the gender split. This is globally. They just go there. It's kind of like the women have said, we've had enough of you. And they don't come back together again until adolescence, right? Another area that men aren't good at, and this is just all from the research, is this thing that we call, repair attempts, right?
Mm-hmm. So important.
Where, we've kind of gotten to a spiff and, kind of real time, we're trying to make it better. Hey, sorry, didn't mean that. Men aren't really good at that setting. So we, there's specific areas that we work with, the genders on, right? Mm-hmm. So the first thing that the masters do from a conflict perspective is they do accept influence. They give one another's opinions the same weight and same value as their own. That doesn't mean they take it all the time, but they always engage it. They're respectful, and they're going to engage. They're going to take a look at this thing because, like, you're important to me, and so your opinions are important to me. Yeah. Right. The second thing they do, right, is they develop dialogues around perpetual problems, and they solve the solvable. So the idea there is that it really doesn't matter who we marry from a conflict perspective. We're marrying a particular set of problems.
Yes.
And 69% of those problems don't have a solution at all. We call them perpetual. Yeah. And those exist because of fundamental differences in personalities, right? The issue is they become mishandled. So they calcify into things that are very uncomfortable. People begin to feel not liked and accepted for who they are as a human being. They feel rejected, right? Now we get into pretty lengthy conversations on those, where we're shifting from gridlock perpetual back to perpetual. But in the process, we're creating good conversations that have good emotion around things we're never going to agree on. And that's 69% of couples' problems. And they solve the solvable, the remaining 31%. If I forget to take the trash out, we can deal with that one, right?
Yeah, empathy is huge there because we're all going to have, like you said, unsolvable problems. It's not that we have unsolvable problems, it's how we deal with them. And can we take our significant other's point of view?
Yeah, so you're totally right. I don't have to agree, and I'm not, and me and my wife are not going to agree on 69% of our problems, right? And that's totally fine. What's important is that, so I understand the perpetual issue, but more the dream, what we call the dream within the conflict, which is a fancy way of saying, what is it that you're really looking for in this thing?
Yeah.
Right. And that thing is literally part of who you are as a human being. You're never going to budge off that thing. Right. So I really got to understand it. Right. I have to understand how this thing became literally part of who you are.
Right. And for sometimes there's one of them that seems more socially acceptable, like the clean person versus the messy person.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But it's still who the person is.
Listen, here would be an example. I had this couple. They were older couple. They were in their mid 80s and had been married 45 years. Right. And they came in one day and they were arguing about a new window they're putting in the house. I said, it ain't about the window, guys. And he says, you're damn right. This woman's been trying to control me for 45 years. Perpetual issue number one, right? And she said, and I've just wanted an opinion for 45 years. Perpetual issue number two.
Yep.
So I go after the dreams within the conflict. So, I said, so what is it that you really want in this thing? And the husband said to me, I don't want to be taken advantage of. What's that? Right? Where's this thing? Well, where's, coming out of left field somewhere, right? And she said, I need to have a voice.
Mm.
So we start the intervention where we kind of go on these Viktor Frankl man's search for meaning.
Yes, yes.
And he had grown up in a very, very old-fashioned home that was, like never give a woman an inch, she'll take a mile, right?
Oh, mm-hmm.
That type of really old
Right.
thing, right? And he also got divorced as a young man. He was, prior to this long-term marriage, he was in a marriage, got divorced, felt he got taken advantage of in divorce court.
Mm.
So his willingness, or maybe even his capacity to accept influence from a woman was just not there.
Yeah.
It just wasn't part of who he was. His wife had come out of a very physically and sexually abusive home.
Mm.
She never had a voice.
Oh, that's core negative image work, that she had a core negative image of him as never giving her a voice, and he had a core negative image of her as trying to take advantage of him. Yep. And but with core negative image, this is Terry Reel's work. It comes from usually more so something from my past as well. It's something in maybe my partner, but it's also something in my past. And
yeah, so they were just gridlocking for 45 years, right? So that's an example. But after 3 hours, they looked at each other and said, like, I never knew.
Oh.
I never knew.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Right? They knew one another's stories, but they never understood them. They never understood the impact, that had on them individually and corporately. So that day they began a conversation that they'll revert back to time and time, because they're going to keep banging it to this perpetual thing, right? These fundamental differences. Yeah. And they go to buy a car or go on vacation. So that's the idea with perpetual problems. We can form good conversation with good emotion around things we're never going to agree on, right? And then finally, the third thing that the masters do when it comes to conflict is they self-soothe. Mm-hmm. Meaning when the temperature begins to rise, right, they take a break, but they not only take a break, they do something to downregulate the physiology, right? So we can keep the frontal lobes working. So that's the fifth floor. And the top two floors are pretty quick. The sixth floor is making life dreams come true, right? The greats know what one another's life dreams are, and they help one another achieve them.
And create some as a couple too.
100%, right? Dr. Julie Gottman wanted to climb Mount Everest, and John helped her get it done. Uh-huh. Right? That's the type of thing we're talking about, right? And then finally, the top floor is we define as shared meaning, and the idea there is this is legacy, values, and rituals of connection. Like what's your ritual for waking up in the morning, or for going to bed at night, or for breakfast or dinner, or entering or leaving one another's presence, or holidays and birthdays, vacations, anniversaries, all these things. Couples move through time and space together, right? And so they create this shared lens that they bring meaning and purpose to the life that they're experiencing together. That makes sense?
It totally makes sense. Yes, I'm familiar with the Sound Relationship House. I was hoping that you would go through it when I originally asked you. So that's beautiful, beautiful. Well said. And so how do we get there if we've been through a betrayal trauma?
Yeah. So before, before we really get into in any substantial way, have a couple that comes in, right? There's been an affair. The first thing that we need to work on is really the affair recovery program. The offended party is not going to be interested in sitting down and focusing on some interventions on how to really do love mapping well, right? Or they're not interested in sharing fondness and admiration or making life dreams come true, for that matter. They're highly upset. They're traumatized, right? And so we go into affair recovery, right, for complete confessions that are stopping at a bedroom door. We explain to them why that is. We don't want to increase the trauma.
Yeah, I know the desire is to know everything, but it's so wise to stop there.
It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible when couples go into great detail. I mean, it's devastating. So we're getting the complete confessions, right? Step 2, behavior change, transparency, and verification. Step 3, really answering the question of why are you coming back to me? Mm-hmm. Step 4, really discussing the idea, exacting high price for future betrayal, right? And then from that point, we get into really taking a look at the house and structurally what could have been going on. But those first 4 steps are going to last a while.
So that we have to have those first 4 steps for the marriage to be repairable, right?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if those 4 steps, if one party is not amenable, it's not going to work. Is that your opinion?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Listen, from a confession perspective, what the research showed was the person needed truth to heal. Right?
I mean, that's true after any trauma.
100%. One of the biggest things with trauma is people getting comfortable in their own skin again. Mm-hmm. Right? And so people needed truth. They needed to know that there was not anything else out there, that there wasn't going to be another shoe that drops.
Yeah.
So we get complete confessions. Right. And
the lying. There's almost always lying. And that is almost worse than the actual betrayal. It's the lying and often the gaslighting.
Yeah. And I tell people, look, maybe you're withholding information because you don't want to cause any more pain. But the reality is, it's important for you to know at some point in time, that information is going to leak out. Truth has a way of finding light. And you guys have spent 5 years repairing your relationship, and now this new piece of information comes up, right? And then it becomes, we can't repair it, right? It's like, okay, I've been living a lie for 5 more years, right? What else is there? Mm-hmm. So we really emphasize this idea of complete confession. Mm-hmm. Again, that's going to stop at a bedroom door, right? Behavior change, transparency, verification. That's different for every couple. I have them on Life 360. I have them, they link their phone. It's different for everybody. But the idea there is the person is really given a platform where they can really, feel safe and secure, in life, mm-hmm. right? On a day-by-day basis, and they can really know that no shenanigans are going on.
Yeah, right.
And the big one, and that really takes a while, to settle into. So this affair, I'm, putting out in 4 points, but this affair recovery really, lasts for a while.
Right.
Excuse me, I've got this whole cold thing going on. But then the idea of why are you coming back to me? You left me, right? And you'll hear like, well, because I love you, right? Well, why do you love me now when you didn't love me last week? Or you're saying you love me, but I caught you midstream in the affair, right? So if I wouldn't have caught you, would this affair still be right? And so it becomes a very complicated issue, right? But
what is typically a satisfying answer there? Is it that I want you, I choose you, I want you?
Exactly.
I was lost, but now I'm found.
Correct. And I think, listen, when the temperature is lowered in time, because it takes a long time, and people really begin to understand the structure of what great relationships consist of, we're smart. We can see like, oh my God, right? Not only I can totally understand how this happened, right? And I can completely understand how I was even set up for something crazy to happen. But they're never going to get there until, I mean, we've really taken a lot of the pain out of the picture, right? And
Right.
so in affair recovery, people have to vent. And I would say one of the most important things for the offender to know, right? Not only in working all these steps, but there's going to be some hurricane force wind moments, right? When that offended party erupts. And it's important for them to know those moments they're really not about them, meaning not about the offender. You have a person that psychologically speaking is really destabilized in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's kind of like being in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean with no life preserver in a storm, right? And so they're seeking land, safety of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the offender can remain non-defensive, extremely important, remain non-defensive, and hang in there, go, look, I completely understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
I understand what I did. I'm here, right? I'll spend a lifetime making this up to you, et cetera, right? It'll help to reduce that particular moment at hand in duration and time. And it'll also help to put time and space between, other episodes. Make sense?
Totally.
Yeah. So it's really imperative to remain non-defensive during these trigger moments.
That's not easy either. It's not easy.
No,
Okay. And so for the person who needs courage to walk away because there isn't repentance, what would you say to that person?
yeah, I would say, look, I understand that, being in significant relationships, long-term relationships are difficult to leave, right? We understand that, our spouse harmed us, they did something bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sinful, right? Um, but I'd also, and that's going to cause grief to walk away, right? There's already been grief caused by what they did, and walking away and, realizing, that this relationship is over, right? We're going to have a lot of grief that ensues, and we're going to cycle through all those stages. But I will say this, if the person is not repentant, they're not willing to go through these stages of affair recovery, you have no relationship. They're not there.
Right.
And not only are they not going to do the affair recovery, they're not going to do what's required to structurally build a sound house.
Yeah.
And so they're not in the relationship, and you're just going to continue to get harmed. So it's time to leave, right? And certainly in big moments like that, we need, a lot of really good people around us that can love on us and encourage us and, help us, get through that, because that's traumatic in and of itself, right? But I think at the end of the day, what I would say is, look, I understand that it's very painful and it triggers grief, but it's essential that you leave.
Yeah.
Because they're
It's
not
even
there.
enabling them to stay, wouldn't you say?
Totally. They're not there. And what the person is doing, they're just setting themselves up for more pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as painful as it is, if they're not willing to engage in the steps that we know scientifically, morally, theologically will work, if they're not willing to engage in those, it's time to go.
I love the way Corinthians talks about, if the unbeliever wants to leave, let them leave, that we're called to live in peace. And they might have unbelief just about the marriage, right? They're not believing in the marriage, or they're not believing that God, anyway. So we can look at that scripture a little bit more broadly, I think. This has been extremely enlightening. I know it's going to help so many people. Thank you, Chris Cambas. This has been just really good. Any final thoughts before we send you on your way?
I'm just grateful you had me on. I really, truly appreciate it and admire what you do, and really just look forward to meeting you in person and the rest of your staff. It'll be a good time.
Yes. And you have a podcast as well, and we'll put your links in the show notes. Any particular place you want people to check you out at?
Not yet. There's a lot of surprises coming.
Oh, how fun. All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on you, Chris Cambas. And thank you so much. And Lord bless you guys. And we're healing from trauma together. More great trauma healing content coming next week. Oh, that was so good. I know that you learned a lot. I bet you were taking notes. And we go over a lot of tools in regarding relationships in the Relate class of Hearts Returning Home. In fact, are you looking for more wholeness? Are you looking for more healing, more stability, healing from traumas? We have something for you. And what I want you to do is actually talk to a member of my team. Don't you love it when you can talk to a person? It just doesn't happen enough these days. You know, you feel like you're talking to a bot all the time, but I want you to talk to a person from my team. Go to drbarbaralow.com/book a call and have a call, schedule a call with a member of my team, and we can talk about how to create your personal wholeness plan to help you get the healing, the wholeness, the joy, the peace, the belonging that you long for. And make sure you're on my email list. Go to drbarbaralow.com/contact and give us your email. And make sure you're following us on Facebook and Instagram. I love you. I'm here for you. I'm praying for you. My team is praying for you. And you know what? Jesus died so that you could be whole. It is the great exchange. Isaiah 61, he heals the brokenhearted. He's healing your broken heart, and we are with you all the way. I love you, and I'll see you in all the usual places. Catch us next week for more help with healing the trauma sick.